The August 2023 Pokemon Presents, coupled with some better received announcements that followed shortly thereafter, have cemented in my mind that in trying to be for everyone, Pokemon Presents in their current form are guaranteed to end up being a waste of time for all involved. Let's talk about it. The thing about these digital event Nintendo Direct hopefuls is, unlike them, Nintendo Directs are as beloved as they are because of their everyman approach. If you are a Nintendo fan in the year of our Lord 2023, you can bet your bottom dollar that you'll walk away with 3 to 4 announcements that interest you. And for the best of them, at least one that you're ecstatic about. When you have a potential reach of tens of millions, that's realistically the best you can hope for. But for most other companies emulating the formula, it's a way better bet to laser in on one thing and one thing only. Let's use some examples of events that go wrong to better set the stage. What do they usually entail? This isn't a rhetorical question, by the way. You all have the power of responding. I'm sure you have thoughts here. Mobile game announcements, for celebrity or influencer-led segments, announcements for future announcements. The list goes on. But the thing about all of these things is all of them can be and often are exciting to someone. The problem is those people aren't the majority of who makes up the audience for these broader reaching presentations. The people that are will actively bemoan the entire presentation for those inclusions, and unlike Nintendo Directs, they don't have a strong connecting through line, i.e. we are all here watching a Nintendo Direct to see announcements for Nintendo Switch games. This is a difference that I am constantly reminded of every time Pokemon Company announces a new event. I always find myself quote retweeting their announcements with a disclaimer telling people to temper their expectations because given our position as a Nintendo channel, that you should subscribe to by the way, I know how this goes. I know what people in that realm come into events expecting. At the same time, as a lifelong Pokemon fan, I also have a deep understanding of what Pokemon Company's approach to these events are. And let me tell you, those two things are not compatible. The wild part is, you would think an event about Pokemon having Pokemon related whatever would be enough connecting tissue in the same way a Nintendo Switch game event for Nintendo Switch owners works so well. But you'd be very wrong there for a lot of different reasons. Despite the fact that one franchise is objectively less broad than an entire ecosystem that in part facilitates hundreds of franchises, Pokemon fans are somehow almost always more divided than these individual fan bases that come together for Nintendo Directs. I don't think I know anyone that likes Pokemon for the same reasons or in the same way as another person. Some people love Pokemon just for the anime, some just love the cards, and yes, some just love the games. Within all of those things, some people only love specific eras of them. We've all heard of Gen 1ers. Some only like very specific versions of a specific thing, only play spin-offs, only play mobile games, only play the mainline games. Some only engage with specific aspects of those things, play the mainline games exclusively for shiny hunting, or competitive battling, or just a campaign, or some kind of cocktail of some and or all of that. And even all of that is just scratching the surface, and that is by design. Pokemon Company is like every other massive modern corporation. They want to monopolize our time and attention. The problem for us is, unlike a lot of these other corporations, Pokemon Company has done a pretty good job of doing just that organically. We've seen it more than once. Pokemania in the 90s to early 2000s took over our lives, and they tasted this level of omnipresence again not too long ago with the peak of Pokemon Go. With that in mind, I can't in earnest fault them for trying to maintain something only they have accomplished with any level of consistency. However, I do think this Pokemon Present strategy being their approach is a swing and a miss where it could be a pretty easy home run. All they really need to do is better consolidate their announcements and be more selective about where they show what. And it's not like they don't do this to some level. We get better communicated scope with individual reveals like the Kitakami Poltergeist trailer or the closing ceremonies at Pokemon Worlds, but even those are just scratching the surface of what could be. What I think they should start doing is more heavily branding Pokemon Presents around their specific verticals. Pokemon Mobile Presents, Pokemon TCG Presents, hell, even Pokemon Center Presents would all be a lot better received than shoving all of these seemingly related but ultimately disparate things into one bloated presentation. Two important things there with this though. One, that will decrease the eyeballs on some of these presentations. There's little to no chance that an audience for a Pokemon anime presents would amount to the same views as a mainline Pokemon game presents. But the people that do tune in would be infinitely more likely to walk away satisfied with what was shown. 2, this approach should in no way preclude them from having all hands on deck presents from time to time as well. I'd actually still suggest they do them regularly to some degree. It just means they need to save those instances for really special or actual targeted multimedia spanning events that will impact fans of all of the verticals involved, because that is the only actual way to convert fans of one thing to being fans of another. You can't just hope that people tuning in wanting to see Pokemon GBA games revealed for NSO for the 10th time will have a positive response to another Pokemon Cafe Remix event announcement. But you can reasonably expect Pokemon Cafe Remix fans to be open to a new Pokemon Masters event, or even in the instances when you know you will deliver a clearly coveted announcement in one vertical, i.e. those GBA ports, you could easily parlay that excitement into related announcements in those places mainline video game fans are less likely to engage with, i.e. a GS Ball event in Pokemon Go or something like that. No matter what they try to do, there's absolutely no way any of what they do will end up being for everyone. In fact, the opposite is frequently true. I don't ever see people getting excited for other verticals they didn't come to see. They just complain that they're there getting in the way of the information they actually came to see. That interaction isn't good for anyone. Those people get mad, the people that do care about what others are complaining about are put in an awkward position, and Pokemon Company looks worse off because of it. They need to give that strategy up, no matter how hard it may be. But they can stand to make better concerted efforts to make whatever actual crossover potential they do have work in the best way possible. Like, there is a real incentive there for mainline game fans to play Pokemon Go, because what they do there can impact the main thing they naturally want to engage with. For example, I check Go regularly whenever there's a community day for a Pokemon I care about, because I know there's a real chance I may be able to get a shiny version of it. Or the way the Pokemon TCG apps have historically interfaced with the physical cards. These are both things that naturally can appeal to people that are already engaged in one way or another. They could stand to do more of this by having similar cross promotions with their animation projects, and to be honest, that's another vertical that could pretty naturally interact with any of the other mediums. Character cameos are easy across the board, more distributions of important characters and or their Pokemon, or even their clothes and or accessories. The potential is endless, really, and I'm sure the same can be said with other verticals I personally don't get as involved with as well. After all, merchandise is the biggest of all of their verticals, and that's a result of its natural ability to integrate every other medium seamlessly. All of that said, I actually think their marketing as a whole isn't presented as well as it could be on a consistent basis. We get this weird mix of infomercial style presentations and found footage or documentary style animations, and I just think they could commit way harder in the latter direction. Pokemon's marketing being closer to the way Splatoon's marketing is presented would be a lot more fitting to the world they've created. Where Pokemon tends to shift between a passive and active perspective in their franchise's world, Splatoon's messaging is always from the perspective of researchers that are directly observing their world from within it, and I think that approach would fit Pokemon perfectly, especially since professors already canonically exist within the game's world, and we barely actually interact with them in a meaningful way as is. If we went into Kanto with research findings led by Professor Oak, we'd have a direct reason to see him as a trusted source of new information without them needing to just tell us to believe that in text, while he does little more than giving us a single Pokemon and then telling us to gather research for him while he stands in the back of his lab for the entirety of the game. The whole Pokemon professor role in the world would be a lot more believable if we see them being the face behind the information dumps we get before, during, and after a new game release. This approach would also do a lot to set realistic expectations, because when there's something that calls for more pomp and circumstance, having a more traditional event would send that message loud and clear. Think how Nintendo had directs as a conduit for announcements when the Switch was ready to be properly revealed, and yet they still opted to go with a live in-person press conference for Switch's official reveal. That sort of change in pace accomplishes a lot when done well. Currently, they change that pacing seemingly at random, and that just leaves everyone confused, angry, or both. On the topic of confusion, I need them to stop having such disparate art styles for their marketing for the games in particular, unless or until they have games that meet the expectation the key art and or trailers set. The fact that the TCG's marketing art style is more consistent while the art style for the cards themselves intentionally vary pretty wildly is insane to me. I don't need them to look like these hyper-realistic or even more Pixar-esque 3D art styles they model their trailers after currently, but I am here once again saying, just make the art style look like an anime. It can't be a power constraint issue. Naruto games have been doing it since the PS3 era. This weird in-between just puts them in an awkward position when it comes to texturing, lighting, and other effects. With a more cartoon-inspired look, a lot of this stuff could be accomplished in a variety of ways that are less taxing to their engine, I'd hope. Because again, games have been accomplishing similar looks on hardware that is far less sophisticated than Switch for literal decades now. This video ended up being about Pokemon marketing at large, but I do genuinely believe Pokemon Presents are in a very similar position as where Nintendo Directs began. If you just watched the inaugural Direct back in 2011, it'd be hard to believe they'd end up becoming the industry juggernaut they are now. I think if Pokemon companies started tightening up what they present and where they present it, Pokemon Presents would not only be more deserving of the hype their announcement can garner, they'd also be able to demand a lot more attention in the long run. If you want to support this channel, check out our Patreon to see if any of the available tiers are a good fit for you. If you want to hang out with the community, our social media accounts are linked in the description. Above all, subscribe to Redirect and ring the bell to be notified when new videos go live. Speaking of which, check out our video on how Pokemon games could become a lot better at implementing their lore into their gameplay if you would like to see more now. Okay, that's it for me. See you in the next video.